What's up, everybody? Hope you're all having a great morning. I thought that even though I still have some movie reviews that I'm backlogged on, story of my life, I wanted to just share a segment with you that I think I'm going to do on an ongoing basis called Tuesdays, where I talk about various movie pairing suggestions that I have, just in case any of you out there are maybe searching for something that you want to put together, a couple different movies for your own movie night. Maybe you want to do your own sort of private last drive-in Joe Bob style thing where you get together with some friends and put a couple movies together. So with that in mind, I will probably reach into past years and decades in the future, but for now, just to keep it simple and pertinent, I'm going to be sticking to several pairs of 2022 releases that I think pair up nicely together. So without further ado, here we go. So first up, we have Sissy and Pearl. Now, these are both movies that I don't have reviews for, sadly, because I saw them both before I decided to start relaunching my channel, and that's too bad because they're both fantastic. I might post full reviews for both of them at some point, but we'll cross that bridge when we come to it. These are both movies that explore themes of isolation, abuse, and mental illness. They're both anchored by flawless and very brave lead performances, and they're both punctuated with physical and emotional outbursts that are startling, haunting, and fairly unforgettable. And they both revolve around characters who are essentially victims of their own insecure need for approval. If I was going to recommend an order to watch them in, this is probably a pretty simplistic approach, but I would probably start with Pearl just because it is set in the past, and it is interesting to watch horror that is built around the same sort of social issues as we're carrying from the past to the present. Sissy has a more satirical voice to it in places, which makes it a less raw and painful, but still very powerful and emotional experience. And it's just a nice way to come down a little bit after having Mia Goth melt your face off with her ungodly acting chops in Pearl. And that's not to say that Aisha D is giving a lesser performance. It's just that whereas Pearl very much looks and feels like a tragic horror story on all levels, Sissy has more of the look and feel of a chick flick that just happens to be populated with some horror elements. Again, doesn't make it a lesser movie, but it does make it a movie that kind of soothes you in a little bit after you've been through the Pearl experience. So there you go, watch Sissy and Pearl, but watch Pearl first. And my next pairing recommendation is The Sadness and Terrifier 2. They both scratch the Splatterfest itch. These are both obscenely, absurdly, and unrelentingly gory films for those of you who like a little extra marinara with your macaroni. And believe it or not, The Sadness was actually directed by a good old Canadian boy, Rob Jabaz. That's right, sorry, definitely not sorry. And Terrifier 2 does not need any explanation nor introduction at this point. I would recommend that you watch The Sadness first, mostly just because I think that Terrifier 2 has a little more substance to it. I enjoyed The Sadness a lot as a fun Splatterfest ride, but it's also not more than that. The gore goes for broke, but there wasn't really anyone in the movie that I gave much of a fuck about deep down. Whereas Terrifier 2, besides wonderfully expanding on its villain, also gives us one of the best final girls of recent years. And whereas The Sadness is brutal and cynical all the way through, Terrifier 2 actually ends with a glimmer of hope. So in that regard, it's a nice way to end it off. And they're both still movies that have a heck of a lot of fun putting human beings through the meat grinder. So there you go, Sadness and Terrifier 2 in that order. And last up this time round, I'm going to make a recommended pairing of Dayshift and Bullet Train. Not for nothing that these are both movies that come from various veteran talents of the John Wick franchise. And they're also both movies that I enjoyed a million times more than I would have anticipated. They were both total blasts. The action in both of these movies is deliriously insane. Dayshift features at least one priceless action sequence involving Scott Adkins and another guy as a pair of Russian vampire hunting brothers. That is alone worth a watch. And the quiet car fight scene in Bullet Train feels like what you would get if you let Charlie Chaplin and Buster Keaton fight it out in a car in a John Wick movie or something, you know? And in terms of the order for these two, I think you could probably slice it either way, but I would probably recommend watching Bullet Train first and then proceed to Dayshift, because in my opinion, these movies could be set vaguely in the same universe. Maybe that's just totally my opinion. I know for a fact there is no concrete connection between these films, but it sort of feels like Bullet Train gives you a view of what the regular hitmen are doing, and then Dayshift shows you what the guys are doing while the regular hitmen are either asleep or on vacation. The order is totally up to you on this one, but I would still recommend going with Bullet Train and then go on to Dayshift. So that's all I've got for this one. Please let me know in the comments what you think of this whole concept. I mean, I'm going to do it regardless of what anyone thinks, but I always like the feedback, so bring it on, please. More material coming your way very soon. Please stay warm and drive safe as we move into winter. And as ever, I will catch you all later.